Welcome to the Divinely Sovereign Podcast. I'm your host, Senna Scott. The Divinely Sovereign Podcast is a spiritual growth podcast and sanctuary for women becoming their most creative, expressive, and sovereign self. This is for the woman who is done pushing, proving, performing, and ready to live from self-trust, embodiment, inner authority, and divine alignment. If you are in a season of becoming, this space is for you. So what pain have you been trying to avoid that is actually your greatest source of wisdom? There is an ache that many of us carry. It's quiet, persistent, and often misunderstood. In this episode, I sit down with resilience coach, occupational therapist, and regenerative practitioner Kelly DeMarco to explore what she calls the ache, that deep internal knowing that something within us and within our world is asking to be felt, witnessed, and transformed. So, quick little bit about Kelly. Kelly Isabel DeMarco guides people carrying an ache about all the things happening in our world today and their own ache within to find resilience, clarity, and a path forward. As an occupational therapist, resilience coach, and regenerative practitioner, she helps people navigate adversity, reclaim their spark for life, and chart a path to living on fire. Kelly believes that living lit up is the medicine for healing our planet. Your ache is sacred. Kelly is here to help you turn it into something powerful. It is with my greatest honor to welcome you, Kelly. Hi, Kelly.
Hi. It makes me
Welcome.
like want to cry just hearing all of that. I mean, just feeling the depth of the ache that, my own experience of it and the collective experience of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I'm excited. I'm so excited to dive into this. And first, what I want to name and tell the listeners is I met you at That's What She Said. That was a storytelling event of women that came together. Jody Bauer, she was actually on my former podcast, and we talked about religious programming and narcissistic abuse and navigating sovereignty and reclaiming your voice. And so, if you haven't listened to that episode, I highly recommend. But Jody said this beautiful, beautiful space for women in sharing stories. And I remember your story and you sharing, it was like a little TED talk. It was like 10 minutes. But you spoke about the ache and you shared your story and it moved me and shaped me and brought so much language and awareness to my own body and my own ache. And so I just I just have such a deep, depthful love and appreciation for you and you sharing your story and for you to be here today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kelly, I would love to start and just jump in. What is your relationship with the ache? When did you become aware of it in your own life?
Yeah. I feel like for a long time it was something that I was living in response to, but I didn't call it the ache. I just felt uncomfortable. Felt like a restlessness and a like internal push to keep moving forward and go after this experience or that experience or try this or um and then I finally landed myself in a spiritual order that I was in for 13 years. Um Sometimes I call it a spiritual order, sometimes I call it a cult. It just depends on what day and what side of the experience I'm really dialing into. Eventually I left. And after I left, I started to do kind of a deep dive backwards, like starting way at the beginning of my life, like at conception, and just coming forward bit by bit to see like what was it that drove me into that particular experience? Because if it was a cult, why the fuck did I do it? Excuse me, but and if it wasn't, if it was all good, why did I leave? So I was trying to make peace with like the ache that I felt at the time, which was this restlessness about like what was that? What was those 13 years? Because I literally like it was like I went and joined a convent or a monastery and I basically checked out of normal life. I still had a day job as an occupational therapist, managed teams of people, but I was running a meditation center in collaboration with others. And there's so much good in it. And there was also some uh, leadership, like power issues So in that deep dive, that's when I really that's when I saw myself at the age of 20. And I saw this like experience where it was right after the Cold War era ended. And I saw like I had a lot of ache in me around the potential of a nuclear war.
Mm.
And then that subsided because that all came to an end. And I lived in Europe at the time, and so I actually got to see, like, the Berlin Wall and felt, like, the relief of that era coming to an end, and then right after that was when I first learned about this thing called global warming, climate change. It was when the first report came out about the impacts of greenhouse gas emissions on our planet and this future state where we would be experiencing flooding and forest fires and species, extinction. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is just as bad, if not worse, as nuclear war. Because this isn't just like one area getting obliterated, it's the whole planet. And at the time, I really wanted to pursue a career in occupational therapy to help people overcome hard stuff and thrive. And I'm like, what do we do about this? And so for me, that was the birth of an ache that I had no idea what to do about. And nobody around me was really talking about it. And tried to talk with my family. It was just like, it's like it fell on deaf ears, or like I was making a mountain out of a molehill, and I don't think anybody tried to invalidate it for me. They just didn't have the capacity to hold space for that kind of ache that we weren't collectively speaking about.
Yeah.
And so that seeing that helped me understand these steps that I took after it. And like it was like a series of steps that I took that eventually then landed me in the order because I was smack in the middle of an existential crisis. And it was the only thing I could find that would help me. I'm like, I got to find my way to some peace inside. And that's what I did for 13 years. I immersed in that to learn all of these practices that really did help me find my way um, through those feelings. Anyways, like the time in the spiritual order really taught me, like, gave me some very real practices to help me be present to what I was experiencing in the moment, and really helped me know that like there was no feeling too big that I couldn't get access to and be with and be safe on the other side.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think like that's like I realized like there's when we do that work to be present to what we're feeling, I saw all the ways that I squirm and squirrel away from that and get like busy and distracted and want to jump outside my skin and go run and do the next thing or climb the next mountain or get on my bike and ride my way away from it. And I'm like, I can go for a bike ride, but I don't have to run away from the feeling. Like it doesn't have to be because I'm trying to escape something. I can go for an incredible hike, but I don't have to be racing up the mountain to get away from myself.
Yeah.
And I feel like in a lot of the outdoor spaces, the things that I actually was super engaged in prior to, like part of it was love and part of it was because I was just trying to get away from how uncomfortable I felt inside of myself. And now I get to engage in those things just feeling like this is fun.
Yeah.
I'm present, and sometimes my ache is with me, but I'm not running away from it. And sometimes I'm just in the bliss of the moment because I did my work in the morning and sat with my freaking uncomfortable feelings till they were, you know, released through my tears or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, for sharing a bit about your background and your story and your experience. How do you define the ache in your work? What is it and what is it not?
That's a good question. So what it's, as human beings, like we can experience ache on lots of levels.
Yeah.
There's physical ache, there's emotional ache, there's spiritual ache. I think the ache that I'm referring to is it also has like deep longing in it. Sometimes it's a longing to better understand, longing for an answer that makes sense. And sometimes, like the physical ache. My husband was experiencing a cancer for a long time. And there was the ache of chronic pain in our home and all of the ways that we were responding to that. And I really personalized that and thought it was me, maybe. And I couldn't like I was just was hurting because something wasn't feeling right. And he was doing all kinds of things to try to remedy his physical symptoms. And something happened for me when he actually reached out to me and said, like, my pain is so like it's so significant in my body that I actually feel like I might be dying. And when he voiced that, it validated in me like I have known this. I have known that something was so painful in our home, but it almost felt like a violation to try to name it before he was ready to name it. Like I was like pushing against him. And once he said that, it was like I could then be with him in like in
Mm.
the severity of the physical ache. And it like lifted my like it transformed like the one ache that I was experiencing and shifted it into um that was when I was like, "Oh, there's agency in this feeling that I'm having."
Yeah. Yeah. I hear that. I hear that, like, there's such clarity as well too, the moment that you lean into it, the moment that you name it, the moment that there's the connection as well too, right? Where, like, your husband had named it, and then you're able to come together and being like, "Oh my god, this is what I've been feeling." It
Mhm.
sounds like there was clarity for both. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you speak about both personal and also the ache of the world. How do you think those 2 entwine?
Well, we are not separate from the world. We are not separate from the earth. The earth is in us, and a lot of times we treat it as this thing out here to care for, but we are made of all of the elements of the earth, and the same energy, life force, spirit that animates all life is what is animating life in us. And so I believe that the ache that we feel inside, whether it's about that out there or what's going on in our immediate life, it's um a response, like our call to respond lives in here.
Yeah.
And so as an example, my husband's cancer, according to his oncologist, was most likely caused by his exposure to toxic chemicals when he was spraying golf courses in his late teens and early 20s. And they didn't wear protective masks back then. And he believes that's what triggered the genetic mutations that caused him to be diagnosed with multiple myeloma at such a young age. And he had a really like two genes that were mutated, and it was a super rare form of that. But like so many people are being diagnosed with cancer at younger and younger ages. And so the problem, like the environmental crisis, the thing that's out there, the thing that's destroying species all across our planet, it's destroying our lives and our livelihoods right now. It's destroying the bodies that we live in. But it's also like, when it's so personal, it's so like inside of you, it then you tune into the bigger because it's like you're experiencing it. Like I'm experiencing the systems breakdown inside of my own family, inside of the well-being of our nuclear family because of this disease, but it's also connecting me to what's happening to species all across our globe. And so when I tune into my own suffering and our suffering, I also can tune into the macro, like the suffering that's taking place for all sentient beings, all beings that are some have voices and others don't have voices that we understand, but they're communicating to us.
Yeah.
Um, One of my daughters is experiencing this trifecta of things going on in her body. It's POTS, EDS, mast cell activation syndrome, and those all they're all like there's a high correlation between that trifecta and exposure to plastics, to environmental toxins. And I'm like, of course we are getting sicker and sicker. How can we not be if we've polluted our environment to the degree that we have? How can we not be getting sicker and sicker? How can all the rest of the species out there be dying off and we are just fine? Like, no, it doesn't work that way. we also experience the same traumas, and the way that we experience it personally, I think really helps us to tune into like what our whole planetary being is experiencing.
Yeah. It something that my Indigenous mentor, Meg Vihayos McCoy, also deeply talks about in a lot of our work and her work is, is our relationship with Earth. And what I'm feeling also in this conversation right now is like an ache is also like where we're disconnected or feeling that perspective. Like we're not, like we don't belong. And like how much of that comes from when we're not in resonance and in relationship with Earth herself. And I think that that plays such a big part in, you know, everything that you're saying is like, this is the consequences, the effect, the symptoms of where we are not in right relationship with ourselves, with Earth, and each other.
Yeah.
A big statement. I'm curious to see what you think on that.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. And so I did a lot of vlogging. I have a YouTube channel. And so during my husband's, it was shortly after he was diagnosed. It was the night before he was coming home for the hospital the first time. I just opened up my camera and started talking. And I did like, I've got probably 260 videos at least. But I vlogged the whole cancer journey.
Wow.
But I would get responses to those, and sometimes those responses would come in the form of like, well, if he tried this, or if he tried like this natural remedy, or this way of connecting with himself, or this kind of inner childhood work, or this nature connection work, or clearly he hasn't tried those things, or he would be better.
I'm so sorry.
And I called people out on it because
Yeah.
I was like, you have no idea what this man's journey has been.
Yeah.
I mean, like up to the point of just before he was diagnosed, he was spending 3 hours a night sitting in meditation and doing a series of exercises to get himself to the point where he could just sleep through the night and be comfortable in his body enough that he could get some sleep. And I mean, he was seeing naturopaths and acupuncturists and chiropractors, and I mean, we farmed, and he grew all of his own food because he knew that the nutrients, like we have n- nutrient depleted soil, and he was like, I need to grow our food. I need to amend our soil. I need to be doing it all in a certain way so that we can have access to the nutrients that we need to be healthy. And the irony,
Yeah.
of of him being diagnosed with that after all that he was doing. So I I called people out on it, and I just said, I think we have to rethink what healing actually means.
Yeah. Yeah. That.
And I think sometimes it's like we think it's going to be on the physical level, but to be at peace, to be at ease within ourselves, even in the midst of the outer, like struggling in all kinds of ways. When we are at peace and feel a sense of ease, yeah, I mean, I saw him more at peace and at ease within himself in the last 18 months than I had in the time prior, because he stopped wrestling with that question of like, what the hell's wrong with me? Why can't I fix this? And he started accepting it as like, I am in pain because this is going on in my body. And I have a journal of his where I saw he was walking through the halls of the hospital and saw other people who were literally on their deathbed when he was newly diagnosed. And him being present to his own experience allowed him to be present to their experience. And he was writing about his gratitude for the capacity to be present to them in their time of pain and suffering. And he felt like so much love. And I can tell you at the time, like he had a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 pain. I mean, he was working with palliative care. They had to help him reframe his pain numbers because he had been living with it for so long. But to be able to make sense of it and to not blame himself for not being able to fix it was just brought so much peace to him and allowed him to be present to his girls and to me in a way that he hadn't been able to when he was so consumed by that internal battle with himself over, what's wrong with me.
Wow, Kelly. First off, this is the first time I've cried on my podcast. I'm feeling the depth of where the ache, his ache, bodily, physical, of like where it can take you, and where like when you lean in, I hear the tone of deep, deep acceptance and like walking through the tunnel of it, and then seeing and feel like what I'm feeling in my own heart is just that profound love on the other side. I am so deeply moved. I may be answering this question a little bit, but I'd love to hear your words on here, where you would say that the ache is sacred.
Mhm.
Can you speak on how the ache actually holds wisdom or guidance?
It's interesting because what it's inspiring me to ask in return is
Sure.
what's there for you as you tap in, like as you feel your own tears,
Yeah.
and what's beneath that, like what's because I feel like tears are a place we resist going because we perceive that they're going to hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think collectively, when we're with one another in public spaces, it's like whatever I can do to hold myself together and not cry, because that's going to hurt. And I'm going to show people that I'm hurting, or it's going to hurt worse to be vulnerable and to like experience what I'm already feeling, plus the vulnerability of being seen in my hurt. Yet the sacred is that when we release those tears, it's a cleansing, it's a washing, and then life can emerge. And that is sacred. Life is sacred.
I'm not sure if your question was also rhetorical or
I'm not sure either, but
like who you were
it was
asking me.
I had it, and then I was
Yeah,
speaking to it, but I would
yeah,
love to hear if you have, like,
yeah, yeah. I empathetically feel so deeply, and I'm just been so immersed in the story, and through the experience and lens of your husband, and like walking in the hospital, just it's the feeling of deeply experiencing, through your story of your ache, your husband's ache, his physical ache, the, navigating death and life and actually finding more life at the precipice of death. And what's moving me so deeply is just feeling that love in my own heart, and you mentioning his journals of him being really present with it, and him naming the gratitude that he had for the people that were on that were on the deathbed, and the profound peace that he was still able to experience. Like, it's bringing, yeah, yeah, so that's answering that question of what I'm experiencing, what I'm feeling, what I'm moved by, and, yeah, I feel this light in my heart when you were speaking on that, and just brought deep tears. I was gonna start speaking on how, death is another one of these, it's a companion with the ache, where a lot of people don't want to lean into death or talk about
Mhm.
death, or it's funny. I was actually thinking this morning, I had another one of my middle of the night, I'm up, okay, what am I doing, spirit? And I was doing some like energy clearing, and randomly, so about 4 years ago, my grandmother died, and she had a horrific uh experience where, she was highly diabetic. She had already had her foot removed. She had a lot going on. I think she had pneumonia at one point. I'm not exactly sure, like, what was happening, or the causation, but she was back in this hospital. I don't know if it was some sort of like hospice care or what, but it was a situation where, like, she was sleeping and she was on a mattress, on the floor, and the care attendants were not taking care of her. And, I believe she had pneumonia, and that she had, um, water filling up in her lungs. Or I might be totally mistaken on what I'm speaking on here, but, but instead of making that a medical emergency, take her to help drain that or whatever, she was given, I believe, morphine or something to knock her out of the pain that she was also in, and, she died that night, um and there was just a lot of pain in my this was my father's side, and so her husband, my grandpa, uh, just what I've noticed with my family is that when there is death, there isn't an honoring of the person's life. We instead of coming together, it turns into isolation um, and fragmentation.
Mhm.
Instead of coming together as like, "Okay, we can refigure out a new dynamic with our family," we've all moved across the country. Everyone else is split up. And what specifically came up in the middle of the night for me was this deep frustration of, like, when my grandfather, um, went to go spread my grandmother's ashes, only the my father and, his 2 brothers were allowed to come, and none of the grandchildren, and I didn't realize that I had this anger in my body still
Mhm.
of just like, "What the fuck?
Mhm.
Why? Why couldn't I have been there? Why is this so" to be able to, um, honor the life of this person and to come
Mhm.
together and share story, and it's like, I get that there's pain and I get that there's grief, but instead of coming together and instead of, like, moving towards the ache and the pain together,
Mhm.
to move through it together as a family, instead it's it's this push away, and it sucks because my grandpa, he's still alive, but he is not doing well. And
Mhm.
every attempt that I've made, like, he doesn't respond in relationship, and I am so going off on a tangent here, and I'm wrapping up here now, um, but I guess we can kinda talk about, like, how ache can also be an opportunity for community, for
Mhm.
together, for navigating this together, because the ache isn't just an individual journey, as we're
Yeah.
speaking on, it's also collective, it's shared. I'm gonna pause and would love to hear what's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry that that was the experience that you had. Yeah.
You.
And I can feel like the residual, when it revisits you, it's sort of it's begging the question of like, can't there be another way? And like what might that other way be? And I think we're like creating the other way. The more that we wake up to how like that how not good that feels, like it just doesn't feel good. And I think the ache also begs that question of like, could there be a different way? No, or do I just need to make peace with it and accept that that's how it is? And I think sometimes when it's things that are in the past, understanding the paradigms and the mindsets that people have been raised in and trained in and all of the things, like they didn't have the training to be able to hold space for that to be different. And so we can make peace with the part of us that hurts about that. And also the action piece is because within our ache is there's when we like really work with it, it can inform us how to act differently
Yeah.
and how to create differently so that we feel agency, so we don't feel like it's just we're stuck and destined to like it always has to be that way. We get to create it differently. And so my
Seriously.
husband and I, we had lots of conversations about how do we want this to be, because we had the final like 18 months where we were on death's door. And can I share a little bit about that?
Absolutely.
So we had And I just felt like I was, like, looking around at, like, what are other ways? What could this look like? And, we ended up the day that he went on to hospice, the week before, he told me he'd had a, it was 2 weeks before, he had a meditation, and in his meditation, he heard, "It's time, and you've there's nothing more to do. It's time to come home." And he shared that with me, and so I called his brother and I said, "We need to have a family gathering." And he was like looking out into the next month. I said, "No, it needs to happen in the next week." So we did a family gathering the next weekend. And then the following Thursday, it was his last oncology appointment. And during that appointment, um, his doctor said, "It's my daughter and I and my husband, we were all there together." And um, we just said, we would like to know what we're looking at in terms of time. And he said, "You have days to weeks." And, the very next morning is when he went on to hospice. Like, I think that, like, it just sort of gave him permission to surrender and to stop fighting it, just to surrender. And so Friday morning, I he started seeing the room filled with beings, and my one daughter had gone to school. So I messaged her and I said, "Do you want me to come pick you up?" And she's like, "Yes, come now." And I told him, "You need to be here when I get back." And I told my other daughter to sit with him and make sure he's there. And then I called hospice and I called all of the friends and family and I put the word out. And for the next 3 days, we had a revolving door of people coming into our home, saying goodbye, giving high fives, telling stories, bringing food, telling jokes. And every now and then, Tim would, like, he looked like he was gone. And then he would say something like, "Girls, don't slam the door." Or someone would forget the name of somebody in a story, or they would forget the nickname that they gave their friend, and he would just, like, belt it out. And it was just like it was such a beautiful weekend because we all sat there, like, we all knew death was coming. And you don't know exactly when, but it's that way for all of us. Death is coming for all of us. None of us get to get out of that experience. And we treat it as if it's this horrible thing. But when we really open to the, like, it is gonna happen, then it begs the question of, like, what will you do with this one precious life? With this one precious day, this one precious moment that you have. And then it becomes like, well, okay, it's gonna happen. It's like you're on vacation and you have one last day. Like, what are you gonna do? How do you want to spend that one last day of your vacation? I mean, we treat life as a chore, and then we can't wait for the week to get over. But when it comes to death, like, we dread it. And I think at the heart of the work that I do is, like, I want to flip the script on all of that. I want us to embrace the life that we have, the moments that we have. And I believe that the things that hurt us, that feel painful, are like our direct access to what we care so much about, whether it's that other person sitting across from us, the relationship with our children, the things that, like, for me, like, I want my kids to be able to enjoy the amazing, beautiful spaces on this planet that I've had the opportunity to adventure in. And I don't know how much time I have to be an advocate for those places and spaces. And so I feel like that makes me want to go all in on weaving together and tying together, like, my ache for that with like, it truly is for me how we, like, when we're tending to what we deeply care about that's inside of our ache and we are living in response to that. I believe that's how we come alive and thrive, and how we make the most of our one precious life.
Yeah. You and I got breakfast a few weeks ago, and that story that you shared of the man that was in Africa, and he saw this woman that was just so full of joy. I love how you shared this story. Do you mind if I keep telling
Yeah,
it? Or if you
go
wanna take
for
over? Okay, okay. I'm telling your story that you shared.
it.
And, yeah, so the man turns to her and is like, "You are just so full of joy. Like, how? Like, how are you so full of joy?" And she turns to him and says, "It's because I cry."
Hmm.
That that same space of, like, where we're leaning into the ache, and when we feel it and when we cry, it's also our capacity to feel joy,
Yes.
to feel the good, to feel love, to feel the gratitude. at a more expanded level and to experience life more fully and richly and depthly.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm an occupational therapist. I've been one for 30 years. I've worked in chronic pain clinics, holistic clinics. I've been a minister in mysticism, studied pranic healing and tons of different practices. And I find like all of the different ways, all of the different modalities and therapies, like they all lead back to the same place in terms of healing. And what's at the heart of that is like we have to crash into ourselves, into our tears, into our deep feeling. And those are all different ways that help take us there. And practitioners hold the sacred container for us to come back to ourselves. But at the end, like we have to come back to ourselves. And so one of the richest practices I found for myself is literally like on my knees with my tears. And sometimes I need help to get there, but over time I've learned like it's actually safe for me to go there. It's actually safe for me to cry my eyeballs out, to scream and feel just like gut-wrenching purging of tears and sobs, and then to be laid flat afterwards. And then I rise from that and I become something new and different with a new capacity to respond to the need of the moment.
Yeah. So, so beautifully spoken. Oh, and that answers really my next question of yeah, what do you see happening when people avoid their ache versus when they turn toward it? You speak from your own experience, but I'm curious and what comes up for you when I actually ask the question.
Yeah. I mean, when you avoid it, there's just so much energy that goes into avoidance
Mm,
that's
mhm.
not available for response. And avoidance, because I've done it and I've observed it. Um, I think way back at the beginning of my own kind of deeper spiritual path and acknowledgement of like, oh, I'm in an existential crisis. Like I didn't have the words for that back then, but that's what I was experiencing. I was like a typical day for me was a good day was rock climbing, mountain biking, and kayaking all in the same day.
Wow.
And I had a mentor at the time. She's like, "What are you climbing from?"
Mm.
It made me so mad to hear that.
Mhm. Mhm, mhm.
But I was like, and then when I eventually like entered into the spiritual order, and then I would get kind of like called out for my excessive physical activities and like craving for all of that. And it was like, I think that was a little overworked because like a lot of it is genuine love. I actually just genuinely love it. But there was definitely a part tainted by my need to use it as a form of escape.
Yeah.
And it's like I couldn't pedal far enough, put in enough distance. I couldn't get away from. And I think we have so many ways that we distract, some look like healthy ways. Those kind of look like healthy ways at the time. Um, I think our cell phone addiction, that's rampant.
Totally.
I think addiction to, I don't know, food, to substances, to Netflix binging, to
Sugar.
work, to sugar, to um,
Sex.
anything that is, like, in excess. I think all of those things are fine in moderation if you could take it or leave it, and if you feel like you're, like, genuinely doing it because it's like it's you know, eh I've even, like, mostly cut out alcohol, like, cut out the things that can be slightly addiction like, you tell yourself, "Oh, it's after 5 o'clock or it's dinner, I can have this, it's fine." But I've just kind of cut things out like that because just to see, is it really that or am I just telling myself that? And then when I have it, I'm like, "Oh, I haven't had it in a while," and I'm like, "It just sounds good right now, so I'm gonna have it," but it's not like I'm not trying to avoid something or I'm not trying to like I didn't reach that point in the day where I'm like, "Okay, I just wanna numb out a little bit."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I even sometimes to just like you feel a little bit different and it feels fine, but being mindful of why. Like, are you avoiding something? Do you just need to go sit and be with yourself and your tears or your whatever,
Yeah.
and then come back and have it and don't be using it to like mask.
As an occupational therapist and resilience coach, how do you find that the body holds or expresses ache? I understand it's a big question.
Yeah. I mean, it holds ache. It's So I gave you the example of my husband and like, but on the flip side, there's, we have tension in our gut and we're holding emotions in there. We have a chip on our shoulder because we're angry about something. You know, uh, we say somebody's like a pain in my butt or get off my back. Like there's we do store tension in our bodies, and so sometimes just tuning into like what is going on in my body and what might be there. Is my body trying to communicate something to me? And sometimes it's like, I mean, I've had sessions where I've gone in because I have a pain. And during the session, I'm getting treatment for the pain, and somebody's working on my neck. And then all of a sudden, it's like, and like the tears come, and I'm like, oh boy, like here it comes. And I can feel like whatever that was, it was like the barrier between my head and my heart got softened enough that I just got access to, and I think our bodies are really also sometimes we're not ready for that whoosh of emotion. We're not right quite there yet where that feels safe or it doesn't feel safe to see what or we can't do it till we're in the presence of someone who can help hold space with us.
Yeah,
And so our body can't go there, but then we find someone who can help that be more safe. And so I don't know if that partly answers the question.
it does. It does. I would love to hear more about how you support people and your body of work as well, and what it's like to work with you.
Yeah. So it's funny because I've been asked this question where I'm like, "What's your system? What's your
Yeah.
method?" And I was like recently contemplating this, and I said the the thing that's hard to answer about that is I feel like I'm responding to life in the moment, how life is moving through
Yeah.
someone, and so when someone comes to me and life is moving a certain way, it also is moving in me in a certain way, and so it creates this like alchemical response where it's like whatever is coming up pulls something out of me. And so I have a whole lot of kind of exercises and practices that are like rooted in my practice in occupational therapy for 30 years, in my work as a Christian mystical priest for I was immersed in that study for 13 years. I've participated in lots of coach training, both life coaching, health and wellness coaching, climate coaching. And so I sort of pull depending on who's coming to me and where they're at in the moment. Um, my trajectory, like the arc of transformation, is to help someone really sensitize more deeply to kind of the heart of their ache and the way life is uniquely calling them.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's like I feel like our pain is pushing us and our passion is pulling us, and getting more clear on both. On one end helps us have more access to the fuel, and on the other, more clarity around the vision that is like, yeah, that is exciting to me. That is like, even if it's just like sometimes we don't know what the vision is. So I do work with that too, like, help people um do some work around how to get clear around your vision, how to wake it up. Because sometimes it's there, but it just needs like, you just need some practices. So, one of the things that I've done is vision boarding, in a time where it's like, I don't know what is calling me. But when you start seeing images of it staring back at you through magazine clippings, it's like, oh, that looks good. Oh, I like that. I want that. Like, I want that for myself, or that word or that phrase. Like, if I could have more of that in my life, and then putting that on just a board or something that you like stare at, and like that feels like a life that if I could be living that, I could get out of bed and like anchor myself in that, and then we can do some very, more practical work, and like how do you move from this to that? What are the things that are hang-ups, like hiccups? What are the blocks that keep you stuck where you are, and make that feel like it might not be a possibility for you.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful. I'm actually curious. I feel called in case like a listener is really resonating with your story and the journey that you've been through as a wife and as a mother, caring also for somebody that has gone through the portal of death. I'm curious, have you found that people come to you also for that? Do you work with people through that kind of ache as well?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I felt like a listener, like, in the field of, like, wanting that question answered.
Yes.
Cool. Um, so for someone listening who feels that ache but doesn't know where to start, what is one gentle way they could begin to meet it?
I really believe that the simplest, easiest way is to make a date with yourself and the ache that you feel.
An ache date.
Yeah. I know it sounds so exciting, right? Like I'm gonna have a date with my ache. But it's like making, you like your child, I have a date with my daughter after this.
Yeah.
If your child comes to you and they're crying, like you bring them in closer. But we have these parts in us that like, "Ugh, I don't want that." But it's like bring it in closer. Schedule some time to be with it. And if it feels like too much, then like, put a time cap on it and put a timer on. Like I'm gonna go sit, I'm gonna journal about this, or I'm gonna go walk and be present to this. Um, I'm gonna lay flat on my ground and have a box of tissue next to me. Or I'm gonna put this song on so that it can take me to this place. What are the things that help you get in there and prioritize it?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you for reminding me. There's this teaching that I did. This is kind of a separate ache, and I'll be happy to actually share a little bit more about how your talk has embodied and shifted and has been creating um resonance in my body of work in just a moment. But years ago I did this, it's called the no man diet with Kendra Kunoff. And one of the things that um she taught us was that there's this balance of like setting boundaries with yourself, and especially when there's a lot of suppressed or emotion or deep feelings, or in this case the ache. I love what you're saying is just like, yeah, you can kind of have a boundary with it, because sometimes, it's just scary, especially when you've had little t or big T trauma or an
Mhm.
accumulation of this and you haven't had time to express. It can feel like just this massive mountain and you don't want to touch it at all. And so, like, having even like a time boundary of like 15 minutes. I
Yep.
have 15 minutes. I'm going to put a timer on. It's kind of like this. I do a lot of polarity work with the masculine and the feminine. And so I believe that in a lot of ways when we're holding ourselves, there is this beautiful opportunity for our own inner masculine to hold and set boundaries for ourselves.
Mhm.
And I love the idea and have had the practice of setting an actual timer, of like giving myself this time to like fully emote, fully go into it, and then just like bring some love and care and honor that time boundary for myself. So because as a mom, as a single mom, like I have to show up, I have to move on to the next thing, I have to be there for my kid, I have to pick him up from school, all of the extracurricular activities. Like, life can absolutely feel overwhelming too. And so I love what you're naming is yeah, prioritizing it. I mean, even if you have to put it in your calendar so that you do prioritize it, is such important sacred work.
Mhm. I think something else that's really helpful is to, if you have like your trusted inner circle or a trusted someone, and you can say to them, like, I need to do some inner work around this, and I'm really avoiding it, and I'm scared, but I'm going to give myself some time this afternoon. Can you just kind of energetically hold space with me and just know that I'm doing this work?
Uh,
And then can I, if I need to talk later, are you available?
yeah.
Like just that can be so helpful, even if you don't end up talking, or it feels like, okay. it's it's done and it feels tender and raw and I actually don't want to say anything. Just knowing that someone else out there in the universe like has your back and is with you can be really helpful. And I think
Yeah.
that's what we do in community and in intentional community spaces is we hold space for one another to go to those deep tender places that are scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a friend in my life that like we have this ongoing consent that we can just send a voice message, and sometimes I'll send like a podcast of a voice message, but if I feel like, oh my gosh, I'm complete, sometimes a joke that her higher self is holding the space for me, I might just delete the message. Like I might not need a reflection. I might not need her to really listen to it all, but to know that like I can emote and express, or sometimes I'll give her a heads up like, hey, I would love to hear your reflection. I would love to be seen and witnessed in this. Um, that also offers an opportunity for consent and for them to practice getting grounded and ready to hold you. And I want to name too, I feel called to say that it is such a gift to hold a friend, and being someone that gets to hold space for another and to witness somebody in their ache. um it only grows the connection more, it grows love more, and it also cultivates more safety and respect and mutuality in the connection. So something else here too that you started in our community is a potluck going in the direction of the ache. And so I wanted to bring that in here too, just like how beautiful it is to bring in, yeah, friends, sisters, women, maybe even family, of like having that shared intention. Um, and, and, and knowing that it may be a safe space, maybe the first time, as you were saying before we hit record, that, like, it was just more of a space to connect, but knowing that there's an intention of, like, feeling and knowing that it's safe, can cultivate some safety and being able to share more depthfully, and I thought that was, like, a beautiful thing that I wanted to bring in here of planting a seed for someone that's listening to, like, you can create your own spaces and potlucks and circles of bringing this conversation to the fore.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I've held a few circles like this in Wisconsin where I was before here, and I think the thing that I loved about spiritual community is that it was sort of every day all the time that I had access to that. And but I think that we, for as much connection as we have in the digital online spaces, we're lonely, we're like craving real connection with real human beings. And it's there's nothing really quite like it. And what I heard from the people who participated in my prior gatherings was, I need this. I really needed this today, or I needed this period in my life. So, yeah, we need spaces where we can be real and raw and vulnerable. And we don't have to say everything, all the things, but just knowing that there is room for that. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
really huge.
Yeah. So we're coming to a close. I wanted to touch on just real quick how much you've inspired me. This language around the ache, it's really cultivated something within my own body of work where I feel really tuned in with the feminine collective. And something that's been really fiery for me in this past Aries season has been really seen where there's been a division between all genders within our society and community, our country, our globally, and also where like I'm really tuned into the feminine collective of where there's hurt and a deep yearning for repair with the masculine. And so this what I wanted to tell you is that this really shaped and helped me create a workshop called The Feminine Ache that I held a couple weeks ago. And we just really dived into like where there was, you know, pain in relationship and masculine wounding, and also where there was opportunity to lean into the ache and understand that there was such medicine for us in our ache. We
Mhm.
learned where, what was sacred to us, what was vulnerable to us, where our boundaries were crossed, where we were able to reclaim our voice. And so I just wanted to thank you so much for like being such an inspiration and bringing this language into this experience in my own body and in my field. um, it just it just feels like that drop in a ocean where you're making ripples, and you may never know fully how your body of work and your language and when you show up and you speak at an event, who it's affecting and how it's rippling outwards. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, I'm really glad to know, because
Yeah.
it's true. You sometimes feel like you speak in a vacuum where you're like,
Yeah.
does this really, like, do people really, are they registering what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Hear that.
So,
So, I would like for us to close with you offering a final message to the listeners, and as well as where can people find your work, connect with you, learn more about what you do, and potentially work with you.
yeah. So, yeah, a final message would be really like you, listener, are so, like, you matter so much, and the medicine that is yours to offer to our planet, to our world, is so vital because it's medicine that only you can offer. There is not another you out there. And the richness and the resource that is available to you inside of your ache is so, so important. It's like so important to tap into that because it's fuel for the action that is yours to take, and it's medicine for you, and it is medicine for our planet too. And so where you can find me is my website is kellygreencoaching.com. I'm just in the final editing phase of an ebook that's like a 60-page ebook that I will be making freely available for a while to just introduce people more to my story and my work, and more about the ache and how living lit up is truly medicine for our planet right now. So, and when we live lit up, we feel so much better. It's not a kind of bubbly living lit up that is disregarding the heavy and the hard. It's embodying the heavy and the hard and transmuting it. So that's what I want to invite you into if you ever feel inspired to check my work out more or work with me.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you for your
Yeah,
presence and to this beautiful transmission today, for cracking my heart open, for sharing your ache and the collective. And I just deeply, deeply know that this is going to really allow people to feel deeply seen and cultivate safety within their own ache, that it's okay to lean into it. It's okay to feel it. And that there is so much medicine and wisdom in it, in the process of it. And to seek support and to know that you are a resource here, for people to come to, is such a beautiful thing. Thank you so much, Kelly.
you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.